The storm came early that year. Thick snow swallowed the Colorado highway, turning headlights into soft, dying stars. Ella Parker tightened her coat around the sleeping toddler in her arms. The car had died an hour ago. Heat gone, battery dead, cell signal fading. Every minute, the world outside grew whiter, quieter, crueler. She pressed her lips to her daughter's hair. "It's okay, baby. Mummy's got you." But her hands were shaking. When she'd left Denver that morning, the sky was clear. She thought she could make it to the next town before nightfall, maybe find a cheap motel. She didn't expect a snowstorm. She didn't expect the world to forget her halfway between nowhere and hope. A pair of headlights appeared through the white wall of snow. A black SUV slowed beside her broken-down sedan. The window rolled down. A man's voice cut through the wind. "You'll freeze out here. Get in the car." She hesitated. Strangers weren't safety, not anymore. But her daughter whimpered, and something inside her broke. She opened the passenger door and climbed in, clutching the child tight. Heat washed over her. The smell of leather and cedar filled the space. The driver, tall, early 40s, dark coat, sharp jawline, looked like someone who belonged in glass offices. "Not snowstorms." "Seatbelt," he said simply. Eyes on the road. "Thank you," she murmured, voice trembling. He nodded once. "Where were you headed?" "Crestwood," she said. "It's about 50 miles east." He glanced at the blizzard outside. "Not tonight. The road's gone. Closest safe stop's a cabin 10 minutes north." "You'll come with me," she tensed. "I don't even know you." He didn't look away from the windshield. "You don't have a choice." The SUV climbed through the winding mountain pass. Ella watched her daughter's reflection in the window, tiny face. Soft breaths fogging the glass, and tried not to cry. She studied the man beside her. Everything about him was controlled. His posture, his voice, even the way he tapped the steering wheel felt deliberate. "Thank you for stopping," she said finally. He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "You shouldn't thank me yet." Something in his tone made her chest tighten. The cabin appeared out of the storm like a ghost, cedar walls. Wide porch, smoke already curling from the chimney. He parked, killed the engine, and stepped out without a word. Inside, warmth and firelight wrapped around her like relief. He moved efficiently, hanging coats, lighting lanterns, boiling water. A man who'd done this before. Ella sat on the rug, holding her daughter close. He brought her a blanket and a cup of tea. "What's her name?" "Lila," he smiled faintly. "Pretty." She hesitated. "And you?" He paused. "Adrian." Something about the name hit her like static. Familiar but impossible. While Leela slept near the fire, Ella walked to the window. Snow buried everything. No roads, no cell towers. Just the sound of wind pressing against wood. Behind her, Adrian poured coffee into a steel mug. "Storm won't let up until morning. You can take the spare room." "I don't want to be a bother," she said. "You're not." He hesitated. "You said you were headed to Crestwood." "Why?" She hesitated. "Job, nursing assistant. Small clinic there." He turned, eyes narrowing. "Crestwood General." "Yes, why?" He looked away. "Nothing, just, I know it." She frowned. "You're not from around here, are you?" He gave a small, dry laugh. "No, not anymore." As the wind screamed outside, she sat by the fire and studied him. His hands calloused, scarred slightly near the knuckles, didn't fit the expensive watch on his wrist. His face looked like it had seen too many boardrooms and not enough sleep. "You're not a hiker," she said. He smiled without humor. "No, I'm a man hiding from a life that won't stop chasing me." Something in his voice made her still. "Then maybe we're both hiding." Their eyes met across the fire, and for a heartbeat, the storm outside didn't matter at all. When the wood crackled low, Adrian spoke again. "I used to know someone who worked at Crestwood Hospital," he said quietly. "A nurse. She took care of my mother." Ella froze. What was her name? He looked straight at her. "Ella Parker." Her breath caught. "I thought you didn't recognize me," he said, voice low. "But I remember you, from the oncology ward. You were there when my mother died." She couldn't speak. The years between them crashed back. The sterile rooms, the lawsuit that closed the ward, the CEO whose decisions cost people their jobs, including her husband's. Her voice shook. "You're Adrian Wells." He didn't deny it. "You're the reason my husband lost everything." Silence. Only the sound of snow against the windows. "Yes," he said finally. "And I've been trying to make it right ever since." Asterisk for a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the fire popping softly in the corner, and the wind clawing at the walls. Ella stood there, shaking, part cold, part anger, part disbelief. "You," her voice cracked. "You ruined our lives." Adrian didn't move. He looked tired, older than she remembered. "Yes," he said. "I did." The simplicity of it hit harder than denial would have. "You closed the ward," she said. "People died. My husband lost his job. He started drinking. We lost the house, the insurance." Her voice broke again. Adrian's jaw clenched. "I know." "No, you don't," she said. "You got promoted. You got richer. We buried him a year later." The words landed like stones. He didn't flinch this time. He just looked at her, eyes hollow. "I read about it," he said quietly. "I wanted to reach out. I didn't know how." "You didn't want to," she snapped. "You just moved on." He swallowed hard. "That's the thing, Ella. I never did." Leela stirred near the fire, murmuring in her sleep. Ella turned away, kneeling beside her daughter, brushing the little curls from her forehead. Her voice softened. "She doesn't know any of it. She doesn't know what you did." "I wouldn't want her to," Adrian said. "Then keep your distance when the storm clears." He nodded slowly. "If that's what you want." But she heard it, that quiet if under his breath. Hours passed. The storm raged harder, wrapping the cabin in white noise. Ella tried to sleep in the small room, but the silence pressed too close. She got up, walked to the kitchen, found Adrian sitting at the table with a single candle burning between them. "You're still awake," she said. "So are you." She crossed her arms. "You expect me to rest after this?" He sighed. "No, I just didn't want you to be alone with it." Her laugh was sharp. "Alone. That's all I've been since you decided what was profitable." He met her eyes. "Do you think I slept that night? When I signed the order?" "Don't do this," she said. "Don't act like you're the victim." "I'm not," he said. "But I'm still human." She sat across from him. "You had everything," she whispered. "Money, power, choices. We had none. You don't get to be human after that." He didn't argue. He just looked down at his hands, the same hands that had signed 1,000 papers that changed lives. Then he said, almost to himself, "That's what she said too." "My mother," Ella blinked. "Your mother? She told me before she died, you can save a company or save people, Adrian. You can't do both, and I chose wrong." Something cracked inside her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something quieter. A sliver of understanding. The wind howled outside, the kind of sound that made walls tremble. Adrian stood, grabbed more wood, and fed the fire. "You should sleep," he said. "I can't, then talk," he said simply. "Tell me about her." She hesitated. "Leela." He nodded. "She loves stories," Ella said softly. "Always asks about her father. I tell her he was kind, brave. Not what he really was. Tired, angry, broken. But kids don't need the truth. They need comfort." He looked at her gently. "You gave her both." She shook her head. "No, I gave her survival." The wind eased just a little. Adrian took a breath. "Ella, I can't fix the past. But if you'll let me, I'll get you to Crestwood safely tomorrow. You don't owe me anything, not even your trust." She stared at him. "Then why stop for us?" He smiled faintly. "Because I saw a woman on the side of the road holding a child, and for the first time in years. I didn't think about money. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of exhaustion, of grief, of everything they'd never said." She looked at him across the dim light. "What if the storm doesn't stop?" He met her gaze. "Then we wait it out, together, for a moment." She almost smiled. When she finally went back to the room, she lay beside her daughter, listening to the wind fade, the fire crackle, the faint creak of footsteps in the next room, and for the first time in years, she felt something she couldn't name. Not safety, not forgiveness, but the possibility of both. Outside, the snow buried the world. Inside, two people who had destroyed each other sat under the same roof, neither knowing that this storm, cruel and quiet, was only the beginning. The world woke up white. Snow covered everything. Trees, cars, the long mountain road, now hidden under a silver sheet. For the first time in 2 days, the storm had gone quiet. Ella stepped outside, boots sinking into the snow with a soft crunch. The cold hit her lungs like glass, but the air smelled clean, new, almost kind. Behind her, the cabin door creaked open. "You shouldn't be out there without gloves," Adrian said. She turned. He stood barefoot, coffee mug in hand, hair still damp from the sink. The light caught him in a way that made him look less like the man from her nightmares, and more like someone trying to wake up from his own. "I'm fine," she said. He stepped onto the porch. "You don't have to be." Inside, Lila was still asleep, wrapped in blankets near the fire. Ella poured herself coffee, fingers still trembling slightly. "We can probably get to town by noon." Adrian shook his head. "Roads blocked. I checked the radio. They won't clear the pass until tomorrow." She looked up sharply. "Tomorrow?" He nodded. "One more night." Her shoulders sank. "I need to get to Crestwood. If I miss that job interview," He set down his mug. "You won't miss it. I'll drive you myself when the road opens. I'll call the clinic. Tell them you were delayed. Why would they listen to you?" She asked. He hesitated. "Because I'm still the man who funds half their equipment." The words landed like ice. She stared at him. "You're still tied to them." He nodded. Not as CEO, as a donor. It's the only thing I didn't walk away from. Why? Because it's where I met you, he said simply. Her breath caught. That's not a reason. It's the only one that's ever made sense. She turned away, heart racing. Don't say things like that. Why not? Because it makes forgiving you sound easy. He didn't answer. Instead, he moved toward the fire, kneeling to add wood. She caught sight of his hand, a thin red line across the knuckles. Blood dried near his wrist. You're hurt. He looked down. It's nothing. Let me see. He started to protest, but she knelt beside him anyway, taking his hand in hers. The cut was shallow but deep enough to sting. You should have said something, she murmured. I didn't want to worry you. I already worry. He smiled faintly. Old habits die hard. She cleaned the wound gently, her fingers brushing his skin. For a second, everything stopped. The wind, the crackle of fire, even the ache in her chest. When she looked up, their faces were too close. He didn't move. Neither did she. Then Lila's small voice broke the spell. Mummy. Ella pulled away, her heart beat loud in her ears. I'm here, sweetie. Lila rubbed her eyes, sleepy and confused. Is it morning? Yes, Adrian said softly. The storm's gone. Lila smiled, then pointed. Can we make snow angels? Adrian laughed, the sound startlingly warm. I think we can do that. Outside, the three of them stepped into the sunlight. The snow sparkled under the sky, the world remade. Adrian helped Lila shape wings in the white field, their laughter rising like steam into the cold air. Ella watched from the porch, a lump in her throat. The sight was so ordinary, it hurt the man she'd once blamed for everything, now holding her daughter's hand, showing her how to fall without fear. For a moment, she let herself imagine what life might have been like if things had gone differently. If loss hadn't hardened her. If he hadn't signed that order. If forgiveness wasn't something she had to keep fighting against. Later, when Lila napped again, Adrian stood by the window, looking out at the bright, endless white. She reminds me of you, he said quietly. Ella smiled tiredly. You didn't know me well enough to say that. I knew enough, he said. You used to hum when you worked. Same tune every night. Her eyes widened. You remember that? He nodded. I remember everything. She looked away. Then you remember how it ended. I do, he said. And I think about it every day. The silence stretched again, not sharp this time, just heavy. Finally, she said, you can help by not trying to fix it. Just be here. He nodded. I can do that. And for once, he didn't try to explain himself. He didn't promise redemption. He just stood there, watching the snow melt on the glass, while she stood beside him, close enough to feel the warmth, far enough to still call it distance. Outside, the sunlight began to thaw the snow, slow and steady. Inside, something else began to thaw to not love. Not yet, but the space where love could eventually live again. Asterisk. The call came just after noon. Adrian was outside chopping wood when his phone, silent for 2 days, suddenly vibrated in his coat pocket. He looked at the screen, and the past came roaring back. Caller ID, Bennett. Office, New York. He almost didn't answer. Almost. Then he pressed accept. Sir, thank God, we've been trying to reach you for 48 hours. I told you I was gone, Adrian said. The company doesn't need me anymore. With respect, it does. The press leaked the audit report. Investors are panicking. The board's calling for your return. Adrian's jaw clenched. Of course they are. They're saying your absence caused the drop. They want a statement, today. He looked at the cabin, the smoke from the chimney, the faint laughter of a child inside. Not today, he said quietly, and hung up. Inside, Ella was kneeling near the fire, helping Leela color with half-broken crayons. Who was it? She asked. He hesitated. The past? Her eyes flickered with recognition. You mean New York? He nodded. What do they want from you now? He sat down across from her, hands clasped. Everything I walked away from, then say no. I did, he said. They'll keep calling. Silence stretched between them, long, quiet, dangerous. Finally, she said, You can't hide here forever. I wasn't hiding, he said. I was, breathing. She almost smiled. You sound like someone who's been holding his breath for years. I have. He looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment, she saw not the CEO, not the man who ruined lives, but the man who'd been buried under the weight of them. I can't go back there, Ella, he said softly. Not after what it cost. And what about them? She asked. The people who depended on you, the jobs, the company. He cut her off gently. I thought you hated what I built. I hate what it did, she said. Not what it could have been. That night, when Lila was asleep, she found him outside again, sitting on the steps, snow melting under his boots. He didn't turn when she spoke. You're thinking about leaving. I don't want to, he said. But if I don't, other people pay for it. She crossed her arms. And if you do, we pay for it. That word we hung between them, fragile and real. He looked at her finally. Is there a version of this where I don't lose you? She shook her head. You can't lose something you never really had. He stood slowly. You think this is just guilt? I think it started that way, she said. But you're trying. I see that. I just don't trust it yet. I'll earn it. You don't have to earn forgiveness, Adrian. You have to deserve peace. Those are different things. He let out a shaky laugh. You sound like my mother again. She smiled faintly. Maybe she was right about you. She usually was. Morning came grey and wet. The snow was starting to melt, the trees dripping like they were crying. Adrian loaded the SUV, silent and focused. Ella stood by the door, Leela's hand in hers. You're really going back? She asked. He nodded. They'll destroy what's left if I don't. Leela's voice broke the silence. Mr. Adrian, he knelt. Yeah, sweetheart. Will you come back? His throat tightened. If your mum says I can. Ella looked down, eyes glassy. We'll see. He hesitated, then took something from his pocket, a small silver locket, old and dented. My mother's, he said. She wore it every day in the hospital. I want you to have it. Ella frowned. I can't take that. It's not for you, he said gently. It's for her, for Lila, so she knows the world isn't all cold. Her voice broke. Adrian? He smiled, soft and sad. You don't have to forgive me. Just remember that I tried. Then he closed the door and drove away, the SUV disappearing into the pale mist like something unfinished. Hours later, when the phone rang again, Ella ignored it. She sat on the porch with Leela asleep against her shoulder, the silver locket warm in her hand, and whispered into the fading light, Don't forget to come home. The city didn't welcome him back, it devoured him. Adrian Wells stepped out of the car onto Fifth Avenue, and the air hit him like a slap. Horns, cameras, voices shouting his name. The building's glass facade reflected his face 1,000 times. The man they once called visionary. Now the man they called traitor. Inside the lobby, security rushed him through a side entrance. Reporters pressed against the glass, microphones like spears. He kept walking, upstairs. The boardroom waited, long table, expensive suits. The smell of panic disguised as cologne. "Welcome back," said Mark Bennett, the CFO. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "We thought you'd gone off the grid." "I did," Adrian said. "But the storm ended." "Then let's clean up what's left," Bennett said, sliding a folder across the table. "We're bleeding. You need to make a statement." Adrian glanced at the headlines printed inside. Coal industries in crisis. Investors question leadership. He closed the folder. "We don't fix this with words." "Then how?" "By telling the truth." Bennett frowned. "Truth doesn't sell, Adrian. Stability does." Adrian stood. "Then maybe we need less selling." The room went silent. He walked out without waiting for permission. By nightfall, New York had already turned on him. The news replayed his old photos, smiling at fundraisers, shaking hands, pretending not to see the lives his company broke. He sat in his penthouse, lights off, phone buzzing endlessly. He didn't answer. Instead, he stared at the skyline, the thousands of windows glowing like stars. None of them his. On the counter sat the mug Ella had handed him that morning before he left. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he couldn't throw it away. He whispered into the empty room, "Don't forget to come home." The words hit differently in the dark. 2 states away. Ella was washing dishes in the bakery when the TV over the counter caught her attention. Breaking news. Adrian Wells returns to coal. Iron DUST froze. Soap dripping from her hands. The anchor continued. Sources say Wells was pressured to resume leadership after financial irregularities surfaced. Public opinion remains divided following his previous resignation. Mia, the baker's wife, turned the volume down. "You okay, hun?" Ella forced a smile. "Yeah, just." Surprised, she wasn't. She knew the moment he left. This was where he'd go back to the storm he'd built that night. After putting Lila to bed, she sat by the window. Snow was melting outside. The mountains were silent. She wanted to hate him for leaving again. But she couldn't, because for the first time, she didn't see a man running from guilt. She saw a man walking back into fire because someone had to. 3 days passed. She didn't hear from him. Not a text, not a call. Until Friday morning, the phone rang. Number unknown. Double quotes, Ms. Parker. "Yes, this is Crestwood General Hospital in New York. Mr. Wells listed you as his emergency contact." Her heart stopped. What happened? He collapsed during a press conference. Exhaustion, possible dehydration. He's stable, but we'd like someone to stay with him. She sat down slowly, her knees weak. "I'll be there." The next train left at noon. Leela sat beside her, coloring on a napkin, humming softly. "Are we going to see Mr. Adrian?" she asked. "Yes, baby," Ella whispered. "We're going to see him." Outside, the landscape changed. Snow giving way to steel, quiet to chaos. Ella pressed her palm against the cold glass, watching the world blur past. wondering if she was doing the right thing. She didn't owe him anything, but she couldn't stay away. At dusk, she reached the hospital. Security guards, cameras, whispers, the fallen CEO. The mystery woman from the mountains. She pushed through the crowd until she reached the nurse's desk. "Adrian Wells," she said, breathless. "He's expecting me." The nurse looked up. "You're Ella Parker?" "Yes, room 312. He's awake." When she opened the door, he was sitting up, IV line in his arm, hospital gown wrinkled. He smiled weakly. "Guess I'm not as invincible as I thought." She exhaled, relief mixing with anger. "You could have called. I didn't want you to see me like this." "Well," she said, crossing her arms. "Too late." He chuckled softly, then winced. "God, I missed that tone." "You scared me," she whispered. "I scared myself," he admitted. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hospital hummed around them, distant monitors, footsteps, life continuing. Finally, he said, "You shouldn't have come." She stepped closer. "You shouldn't have made me," he smiled faintly. "You came anyway. I always do." Their eyes met, tired, bruised, honest. Outside, the city lights flickered like restless stars. And somewhere deep in the noise, the storm they'd both carried began to quiet. The hospital was too quiet. The kind of quiet that hummed under your skin, where every heartbeat sounded like a question. Ella sat by the window, watching snow fall on the city below. The skyline glowed gold and silver, so far from the mountains, so far from peace. Behind her, Adrian stirred. His voice was rough. "You didn't have to stay." She turned. "Yes, I did." He smiled faintly. "You always say that like it's an obligation." "Maybe it is," she said softly. "You saved me in that storm. Consider this payback." He studied her, tired but alert. "If this is payback, I must have done something right." She tried not to smile. Hours passed. Doctors came and went. Cameras flashed outside the hospital entrance. Every so often, the sound of reporters reached their floor, muffled but insistent, like waves against glass. Adrian sighed. "They'll find you, you know." "I don't care," she said. "You should." "Why?" He looked at her for a long time. "Because when they do, they won't call you Ella Parker. They'll call you the woman who saved the fallen CEO. They'll turn you into a story you never asked for." She crossed her arms. "Then maybe it's time someone rewrote that story." That night, when the hallway lights dimmed and the hospital settled into its rhythm of quiet machines and sleepless thoughts, she helped him sit up. "Here," she said, adjusting the pillow behind his back. "Drink this." He took the cup, hand brushing hers. "You're still a nurse even when you're angry." "Occupational hazard." He smiled, but the smile faded quickly. "I meant what I said before, about the truth. I'm not hiding anymore, from the board, from what happened, from you." She met his eyes. "You think words fix everything?" "No," he said softly, "but they start something." The wind outside picked up, sweeping snow across the hospital window like ghosts. Adrian turned to look. "I used to hate the snow," he said. "It reminded me of endings. And now it reminds me of second chances." She let that sit in the air between them. Then she said, almost a whisper, "You don't make things easy, do you?" He shook his head. "Never learned how." The next morning, chaos returned. Paparazzi crowded the hospital entrance. Headlines screamed, "Wells mystery woman identified." Who is Ella Parker? Mia called from the bakery, panicked. Honey, they're showing your picture everywhere. Reporters came asking if you used to live here. Ella's chest tightened. Mia, don't talk to them, please. I told them nothing, but they'll dig. You and that man, he's not that man anymore, Ella said quietly, and hung up inside the hospital room. Adrian was watching the same news report on mute. I told you, he said softly. You didn't have to be right. He nodded. I never wanted this for you. She looked at him. What did you want? For you to see that I could be better, he said. For once, she took a breath. Then start proving it. He smiled weakly. I'm trying. Hours later, after the nurses changed shifts, Ella came back with 2 cups of coffee. He was sitting by the window this time, staring out at the skyline, wires gone, color returning to his face, feeling human again. She asked, almost, he said. Except for the part where the world thinks I'm in love with you. She froze. What? He turned, half smiling. That's what the headlines say. They're calling you the woman who brought him back from the storm. Her cheeks flushed. They don't know anything. No, he said. But for the first time, I wish they did. Silence. Warm, dangerous silence. The kind that hummed like electricity before thunder. Ella set the cups down. You need rest. He watched her a moment longer before nodding. If I sleep, promise me you won't disappear. She hesitated. That depends. On what? Whether you wake up and decide this was all just weather. He smiled faintly. It's not the storm I'm afraid of anymore. That night, when he drifted off, Ella stood at the window again. Outside, the snow had stopped. The city looked softer, like it was holding its breath. She pressed her hand to the glass, whispering, You can't keep saving me, Adrian. One day, I'll have to save you back. Behind her, in the quiet dark, he murmured her name in his sleep. Not as guilt, not as apology, but as something new. By Monday morning, the world had turned their story into a headline. The billionaire and the nurse. Scandal in recovery. Who is Ella Parker? Photos from the hospital leaked. Her holding a cup of coffee by his bedside, his hand brushing hers. It didn't matter that it was innocent. The world doesn't care about truth when fiction is louder. Inside the hospital, the blinds stayed shut. Security stood outside the door. Adrian paced the room, his phone buzzing with messages from lawyers, PR teams, and board members. You need to issue a statement. Bennett's voice crackled through the speaker. Say she's an old friend. Say nothing happened. Adrian's jaw tightened. Something did happen, Mark. I'm not pretending she doesn't matter. You'll destroy what's left of your reputation. Then maybe it deserves to burn, Adrian snapped. Ending the call, Ella watched quietly from the chair by the window. You shouldn't talk to them like that. I'm done letting other people decide what I owe, he said. She folded her hands. And what about me? Do I get a say? He turned. You always did. That night, when the nurses dimmed the lights, she sat on the edge of his bed. You can't protect me from this, Adrian. You'll lose everything. He smiled tiredly. I've already lost everything once. This time, I'm choosing what I keep. She frowned. And you choose me. A woman the world will tear apart. I choose the truth, he said softly. And the truth is, I care about you. Her breath hitched. Don't say that. Why not? Because you'll make me believe it. Outside, the street below flashed with camera lights. Reporters shouted questions as if they could reach through the hospital walls. "Mr. Wells, are you in a relationship? Is this the same woman from the mountain? Did she influence your resignation?" The noise rose, and with it came the storm, digital, invisible, relentless. Mia called again that night. "Ella, it's bad. They've found your old job records. They're saying you were fired for negligence." It's lies, but Ella's throat tightened. But lies spread faster. "You have to leave the city." "I can't," Ella whispered. "He needs me." By the next morning, a new headline appeared. "Wells mystery woman under investigation." She slammed the laptop shut. "They're going to ruin me." Adrian looked up from the bed. "Then let me stop them," she asked bitterly. "With money? With power? That's what started all this." He exhaled. "With honesty? I'll go public, tell them everything." She stared at him. "Everything," he nodded. "What happened with the hospital? What I did? What it cost you?" "No," she said, standing. "You'll destroy yourself. Maybe that's the price of peace." She crossed the room, grabbing his arm. "You don't owe me redemption." He looked at her, eyes steady. "I don't want redemption. I want you to stop running from what's already forgiven." Tears filled her eyes. "You don't know that I've forgiven you." "Yes," he said softly, "I do. You wouldn't be here otherwise." That afternoon, he called a press conference. The hospital lobby filled with cameras. Security tried to hold the line, but the air was electric with anticipation. Ella stood in the hallway, heart pounding, watching through the glass as Adrian faced the crowd. "3 years ago," he began, "I made decisions that hurt people. One of them was a nurse named Ella Parker. I took away her job, her home, and her peace. And when I saw her again, stranded in a storm with her child, I realized that fate doesn't give second chances, people do." The room fell silent. "If you need a headline, print this: she saved me, not the other way around." Flashbulbs exploded. Questions flew. But Adrian didn't stay to answer. He turned, walking past the crowd, through the hallway, straight to where she stood, frozen. He stopped in front of her. "Now they know," he said. "All of it," she whispered. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because I'm tired of hiding the only good thing left in my life." That night, back in the quiet of his room, she sat beside him, eyes still red from crying. "They'll crucify you," she said softly. "Let them," he murmured. The truth was worth it. She shook her head. "You don't understand. This isn't just your story anymore." "I know," he said, smiling faintly. "It's ours." Outside the window, the snow began again, light, slow, forgiving. Inside, the world felt smaller, simpler. Just the sound of breath and heartbeats in sync. For the first time, Ella didn't feel like running. And for the first time, Adrian looked free. Asterisk, the world didn't forgive easily. Within 24 hours, coal industries lost 15% of its stock value. News anchors replayed Adrian's confession on a loop, every pause. Every tremor in his voice dissected like evidence. Headlines split down the middle. Wells comes clean, finally. CEO's breakdown or redemption. He sat in his office, the same one he'd left a year ago. Now a war zone of ringing phones and restless staff. Bennett slammed a folder onto his desk. "Do you realize what you've done?" Adrian didn't look up. "Told the truth. You've tanked us. Shareholders are calling for your resignation. I already gave it, Adrian said quietly. Bennett stared. Then what are you still doing here? Finishing what I started. Meanwhile, in the hospital cafeteria, Ella stared at the TV in silence. Her face filled the corner of every screen. Photos, interviews, wild theories. The nurse who changed the CEO's life. Saint or scandal. A woman at the next table whispered, "That's her." Ella stood quickly, heart pounding, leaving her coffee untouched. She barely made it out of the building before the first camera found her. "Ms. Parker, do you love him? Did you plan this? Are you after his money?" Flashes burned her eyes. A security guard stepped between them, shouting, "Back off." But she could feel the walls closing in, the noise, the judgment, the cold. By the time Adrian found her that night, she was sitting alone on the steps outside the hospital, her coat wrapped tight. The world spinning around her. He crouched in front of her. "Ella, look at me." She did. Her eyes were glassy. "I can't do this, Adrian. They won't stop, I know. They've called my old jobs, my landlord, even my mother. They're digging into everything. I'll fix it. You can't." She snapped. "You can't fix people." He didn't argue. He just sat down beside her, hands clasped, snow gathering in his hair. "I didn't want you to get hurt," he said softly. "It's too late for that," she whispered. A long silence stretched between them. Cars passed, horns echoed. Life went on, indifferent, fast, cruel. "Finally," she said, "I need to leave the city." He turned to her. "Where will you go?" "Home," she said. "Back to Crestwood. Lila deserves quiet." He swallowed hard. "And me." She looked at him, tired, torn. "You'll find your quiet somewhere else." He nodded slowly. "If that's what it takes to keep you safe." The next morning, she packed what little she had, one suitcase, a stuffed rabbit, and the silver locket he'd given Lila. Adrian met her outside the hospital. He looked exhausted, bruised under the eyes, but there was a strange calm about him. "I called a driver," he said. "He'll take you north." "No cameras." She nodded, silent. When the car door opened, he reached for her hand. "Ella," she stopped him. "Don't make this harder. I just need you to know," he said quietly, "that if this is goodbye, I am proud I found you in that storm." Her throat tightened. "You didn't find me, Adrian. You found yourself." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's enough." The car pulled away, tires slicing through the slush. Adrian stood in the snow long after it vanished from sight. Inside the locket, pressed against Lila's photo, he'd hidden a folded note. "If the world gets too loud, listen for the wind. I'll be there." That evening, the board of directors held an emergency meeting. Bennett announced his removal. Security escorted him out. Reporters waited on the sidewalk like vultures. He walked past them, no coat, no entourage, just a man stripped of everything but his truth. Someone shouted, "Mr. Wells, do you regret it?" He paused at the door. "No," he said. Not a single word. Then he walked away into the falling snow. In Crestwood, days later, Ella unpacked her things in the small house behind the bakery. The town was quiet again. The world had already moved on to a new scandal. She stood by the window, watching Leela play in the snow. The locket glimmered in her palm. She opened it, saw the note, and for the first time in weeks, smiled. Crestwood looked different when you came back broken. The The same mountains, same pine-scented wind, but quieter, like the town could sense you'd lost something it couldn't name. Ella unpacked slowly that first week. The bakery job was waiting for her. Mia had kept it open, no questions asked. The mornings were soft again, the smell of bread, the bell above the door, the hum of small lives continuing. Leela adjusted quickly. She had friends, snow angels, and hot cocoa. Kids are good at forgetting storms. Adults aren't at night. After Lila fell asleep, Ella would sit by the window with her tea and open the locket. The note inside was starting to crease at the edges, words fading slightly. If the world gets too loud, listen for the wind. I'll be there, she'd whisper. Then why can't I hear you? Weeks turned into months. By March, the snow melted into streams that ran down the mountains like silver veins. Life returned quieter, smaller but real, and yet, every time the wind shifted, she'd look up, half expecting to see him. Then, one morning, Mia burst into the bakery, flour still on her apron. "You're not going to believe this," she said, waving a newspaper. Ella smiled wearily. "Mia, it's 6A.M. I'm not believing anything until I've had coffee." "No, really." "Look." She slid the paper across the counter. A headline in the local section read, "Anonymous donation revives Crestwood Free Clinic." Below it, a former executive has reportedly provided the full funding to reopen the town's only medical center, closed since last winter. Ella froze. No name. Mia shook her head. Anonymous. But whoever it is, they've got deep pockets and a soft spot for this town. Her hands trembled slightly. She knew that tone. That kind of giving wasn't business. It was apology. That night, she walked to the clinic, still under renovation, scaffolding gleaming under the moonlight. Through the window, she saw workers setting up new beds, painting walls. Then she saw it. A box by the door, labeled donations from the founder. Inside were small, handwritten notes for the future patients, for those who were told they didn't deserve another chance, for those who stayed, for those who forgive themselves. Her heart tightened. The handwriting was unmistakable. Adrian Wells. She leaned against the doorframe, tears burning her eyes. He hadn't disappeared. He'd simply changed form, trading boardrooms for back roads, deals for healing. She whispered into the night, "You really don't know how to stop saving people, do you?" A voice behind her said softly, "Only one person I can't seem to save." She turned sharply. Adrian stood at the gate. No suit this time, just jeans, a grey sweater, and that quiet, restless look she knew too well. The wind caught his hair. He looked older, humbler, freer. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she whispered, voice breaking. "You're supposed to be gone." "I was," he said. "But then I realized I'd left the wrong thing behind." For a long time, neither moved. The town was silent around them, the kind of silence that makes every heartbeat sound like thunder. Finally, she said, "You built this place." He nodded. "It's not redemption, just repair." "Why here?" "Because it's where you are." She laughed through her tears. "You're impossible." He smiled faintly. "You used to like that about me." "I still do," she admitted. He stepped closer. "Ella, I didn't come to pull you back into chaos. I came to ask if there's a version of peace where I'm allowed to stand beside you." She looked at him, then at the clinic behind him. "Light, hope, possibility. Maybe there is," she said. "But you'll have to start small, like everyone else." He smiled. I can do small. As dawn broke, they stood side by side, watching workers raise the new sign above the clinic, Crestwood Free, Health Center, funded by Second Chances. The wind picked up, soft and forgiving, carrying the smell of pine and paint and something new, something like beginning again. Asterisk, the clinic opened in spring. No ribbon-cutting ceremony, no press, no big speeches. Just a small crowd, neighbors, parents, retired nurses, kids clutching paper cups of lemonade. Ella stood at the front desk, wearing a pale blue sweater and a badge that read Ella Parker. RN. When Adrian walked in, people stopped whispering. He looked out of place, not because of who he was, but because of who he used to be. He smiled awkwardly. You kept the name. She glanced at the sign above the door, funded by Second Chances. It felt right, she said. Days at the clinic began quietly. Adrian handled logistics, paperwork and funding, the things he was good at. Ella handled people, the things he wasn't. At lunch, they'd sit on the back steps with coffee, watching the mountains. You know, she said one afternoon, I never thought I'd see you fix something without a contract. He smiled. Turns out, not everything worth fixing comes with one. Are you happy? She asked. He thought for a moment. Happy's a big word, but I'm not running. That's new. She nodded. That's enough. By June, the clinic was running smoothly. The townspeople had warmed to him. They stopped seeing a disgraced CEO and started seeing a man who stayed late to fix the heater or drive the elderly home after appointments. Even Lila liked him maybe too much. She'd sneak into his office, draw on his calendar and say, you should smile more. Mr. Adrian, he always did after that. But peace never stays quiet forever. One Friday morning, a black sedan pulled up outside the clinic. A woman stepped out, sharp suit, city polish. Mr. Wells, she said, I represent Coal Industries Board. We'd like to discuss your reinstatement. Ella froze in the doorway. The woman continued, the company's in chaos without you. Investors want stability, and your confession made you more human than ever. Public opinion's turning. Adrian didn't answer. She handed him a folder. A full pardon from the board. Salary reinstated. Clean slate. When she left, the silence felt heavy enough to crush air that night. He found Ella closing up the clinic. You heard, he said. She didn't look up. The whole town did. He sighed. It's not what it looks like, isn't it? She said quietly. You were born for that world, Adrian. This one's temporary. No, he said. This one's real. Then prove it, she said, turning to face him. Tell them no. He hesitated. Her voice cracked. See. You can't. It's not that simple. It never is, with you. They stood there, two people caught between forgiveness and fear. The air smelled of rain. Finally he said, Ella, I didn't come here to stay forever. I came to start over. But maybe part of starting over is making things right, back there too. She looked at him, tears rising, but unsure. And what about making things right here? He took a step closer. That's not something I can fix with a board meeting. Then don't try to fix it, she whispered. Just don't leave it. The next morning, he was gone, not far, just to the city for a meeting. But his absence echoed. The clinic felt emptier, quieter. Mia noticed. You think he'll come back? Ella pretended to wipe the counter. He said he would. Mia smiled softly. Men who mean it don't need to say it twice. By afternoon, the wind picked up, that same wind from the mountains, the kind that carried snow and memory. Ella stepped outside, closing her eyes. For the first time, she didn't pray for him to return. She prayed for him to choose to. 3 days later, he did. He walked into the clinic at sunrise, sleeves rolled up, same tired smile. I told them no, he said simply. She blinked. No, no to the job. No to New York. No to the noise. I'm done chasing storms. Her voice trembled. What about your name, your company? He shook his head. Names change. This feels like the first one that fits. She laughed through her tears. You're serious, as a heart attack, he said. Grinning, she stepped forward, and this time, when he reached for her, she didn't pull away. Outside, the sign above the clinic creaked softly in the wind. Funded by Second Chances. Below it, someone had taped a handwritten note. Sometimes the biggest risk is staying. No one knew who wrote it, but she recognized the handwriting. That evening, they closed the clinic together, lights off. City lights flickering in the valley below. The world outside kept spinning faster, louder, endless. But inside, for once, everything was still. A year can change everything, or almost everything. By the following spring, the clinic wasn't just a building anymore. It was a rhythm. Children laughed in the waiting room. The scent of coffee and disinfectant mixed in the air. People came in scared and left smiling. That was Ella's magic. She could make healing look easy. And Adrian, he'd learned to slow down. No more stock reports. No press briefings. Just spreadsheets that tracked medicine orders and handwritten thank you notes pinned to the bulletin board. One of them read, "Thank you for seeing me, not my mistakes." He looked at it every morning. Leela was taller now, wild curls and questions for days. She'd run through the clinic halls, giggling. "Mr. Adrian," she shouted one day, tugging on his sleeve. "You missed snack time again." He laughed, pretending to surrender. "Snack time is a full-time job here, huh?" She grinned. "Mum says you're still learning." He looked over at Ella across the room, sorting patient files. "Your mum says a lot of true things." Lila tilted her head. "Can I call you something shorter than Mr. Adrian?" He hesitated. "Like what?" She thought hard, then said simply, "Dad." The word hit him like sunlight after rain. Ella looked up sharply, eyes wide. Leela continued, unbothered. "You're here every day. You fix stuff. You make pancakes. You're my dad now." Adrian knelt down, heart pounding. "If your mum says it's okay," Ella's voice trembled. "She doesn't need my permission." And that was that. Later that evening, when the clinic closed and the town sank into golden quiet, they sat on the porch together, Ella, Adrian, and Leela, watching fireflies bloom over the grass. "You know," Ella said softly, "I used to think peace was just another word for being alone. And now," Adrian asked, "now I think peace is someone who stays." He smiled. "Then I guess I'm home." In town, people had stopped whispering about them. They were just the Wells family now. Ordinary, imperfect, real. The old men at the diner would nod when Adrian walked by. The teenagers who used to gossip about the scandal now just waved. He'd become part of the town's quiet, not an outsider, not a savior. Just another man fixing a leaky roof before the rain. One afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address, just his name. Inside was a single line. Sometimes redemption isn't what you get. It's what you give away. He didn't recognize the handwriting, but he smiled anyway. Ella found him staring out the window, the letter still in his hand. "What is it?" she asked. "An old ghost," he said, "telling me I can rest now." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then rest." He exhaled, long and quiet, like the end of a storm. At sunset, the town glowed amber, light spilling over the clinic sign. Crestwood Free Health Center, funded by Second Chances. The words had faded a little from weather and time, but the meaning hadn't. Ella took his hand. "Do you ever miss it? The old life?" He thought for a while, then said, "Sometimes. But then I look around and realize I didn't lose that life. I traded it for this one." She smiled. "That's a good deal," he grinned. "The best I ever made." As the wind moved through the trees, the sound carried faintly, not a storm this time, but laughter, fireflies, and something steady, something like forever. The summer storm came out of nowhere. By afternoon, thunder rolled across Crestwood, dark clouds pressing low over the mountains. Inside the clinic, lights flickered. The air smelled like rain and tension. "Power's cutting out again," Ella called from the hallway. Adrian checked the backup. He was already there, flashlight in hand. Generators kicking in slow. "Give it a second." Lightning cracked outside, white and sharp. In the waiting room, a little boy whimpered. Ella crouched beside him, gentle and calm. "It's just thunder, sweetheart. Nothing to be afraid of." Adrian watched her, the way her presence softened fear, how she carried light even when everything else went dark. He thought, this is what home looks like. But then came the call, the kind of call that changes the rhythm of a heartbeat. A car accident 5 miles north, a mother and her son trapped, critical, roads flooding fast. No paramedics close enough. Adrian grabbed the radio. "We'll go. Send 'em here." Minutes later, headlights cut through the rain, and the clinic door burst open. 2 volunteers carried in a woman, pale, bleeding, her hand still clutching her child's. "God," Ella whispered, rushing forward. "Get her to room 2, now." Adrian followed, adrenaline steadying his hands like it used to in boardrooms. But this time, what he held wasn't power, it was a life. Hours blurred into seconds. The power flickered again, the storm howled, and rain pounded the windows. Pressures dropping. Ella shouted. "I've got it," Adrian said, voice low. Focused, it wasn't like the life he used to know. Numbers, markets, control. This was raw, human, fragile. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel helpless. He just felt present. When the woman finally stabilized, Ella stepped back, shaking with exhaustion. "She'll make it," she whispered. "We did it." He smiled, weary, wet, proud. No headlines, no cameras, just us. She laughed through her tears. The way it should be. By morning, the storm passed. Sunlight broke through the clouds, golden and clean. Pouring into the clinic like a blessing, Ella sat outside on the porch, hair damp, hands still trembling. Adrian brought her coffee, sat beside her. For a while, they said nothing. The silence was soft, not heavy. Then she said, "Every time it rains, I still think of that night, the first one. The one where I nearly ran you off the road." He teased. She smiled faintly. The one where everything changed. He looked at her, serious now. You ever think about how close we came to missing all this? Every day, she said. But maybe the storm wasn't punishment. Maybe it was the only way we'd find each other. He reached for her hand. You saved me that night. She shook her head. No, Adrian. You finally stopped running long enough to let someone find you. Leela ran out of the clinic just then, barefoot and laughing, a paper kite in her hand. Mum, Dad, look, it flies again. The kite caught the morning wind, lifting high, shimmering in sunlight. Adrian stood, lifting Leela into his arms as she squealed with joy. See, he said, storms end. They always do. Later that evening, the three of them walked down to the lake. The water was calm, glassy. The reflection of the mountains shimmered like memory. Ella leaned against him. Do you ever miss who you used to be? He thought for a long moment. No, he said finally. I just wish I'd learned sooner who I could be. She smiled softly. You did. You just needed a storm big enough to wash the old you away. He laughed, pulling her closer. And you needed someone dumb enough to stand in the rain with you. She chuckled. Guess we both got lucky. As twilight fell, the air filled with the scent of pine and wildflowers. The clinic lights flickered on in the distance, steady, golden, alive. He looked at her, then at Lila, chasing fireflies by the water, and whispered, You were never the storm. Ella, you were the calm that came after. She smiled. And you were the reason I stopped being afraid of thunder. They stood there, watching their daughter's laughter echo across the lake. The same wind that once carried chaos, now wrapping them in peace. Home wasn't a place anymore. It was the life they'd built, and the promise that no storm could take it away.